Hello everybody, it's Trevor G. Blake from trevorgblake.com, and whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, wherever you're going, I wish you a very, very happy Christmas. I love Christmas. I'm a big kid and always have been. I've loved it since I was born. We've always had very traditional Christmases, and the challenge I've got this year is that my wife did Christmas really well. I mean, she loved it. She started to plan for it in October. I mean, she loved every aspect of it. She got so excited, and I fed off her energy, I think, for 40 years. And then she died last year, just before Christmas. And so this is my first Christmas kind of on my own with the build-up and the traditions and stuff. And so I had the dumb thought in October that I'm not going to do Christmas this year, that I can't compete with the way Lynn did it, and I don't want to remember it that way, so I'll do nothing, is what I thought. I even contemplated going on a world cruise. And then I think I must have been slapped across the wrist from beyond the grave, because Lynn would not approve of that attitude. So she had no time for people that didn't like Christmas. And so I woke up one morning and decided to do the opposite, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to throw myself into it, and I'm going to do it as well as Lynn could do it. I can't, but I would try to do it as well as Lynn did it. And so I actually started putting my Christmas trees up in the beginning of November. The reason I've done that is that Lynn always had the rule that Christmas cannot start until December the 1st. And we used to have this kind of ongoing negotiation whereby I would plead and beg and negotiate and try and get Christmas started earlier, because I get quite excited in November. I don't really get excited for Thanksgiving because it's not a tradition I grew up with. So when Thanksgiving rolls around, I'm all ready to, get the house decorated and start planning for Christmas, get the Christmas plates out and the Christmas crockery and all that kind of stuff. And she would say, no, we can't start till December the 1st. So I thought, right, well, this year I'm on my own, so I'll start when I feel like starting. So first week in November, I had some visitors coming down and they were going to Disneyland. So I thought, well, I'll start Christmas now. So I put trees up and I put the Sirius Radio Holly channel on so I could have Christmas tunes in the car and stuff like that. And it doesn't matter how many times I hear that crap, I still enjoy it. It is such nonsense, terrible lyrics, nonsense lyrics, but we love it all. And so I hope you have the same sort of approach to Christmas as I do, with almost depressing carols in the background and all the traditions. So one of my hobbies is history. So I love finding out where our traditions come from. And so I've read a lot about Christmas, and I think it's one of the best examples of how patterns form out of chaos. So I know if you're a Christian, how would I put that? If you're a serious Christian listening to this, you might think this is a bit of heresy, and you might want to put me on top of the Christmas tree and set fire to me, and that's okay. But it's not a Christian tradition. And I love that fact that the Christians adopted it because they had to. So we have to go way, way back in time. We can go back thousands of years, actually. And it's really a pagan festival, and it's an agricultural festival. It's a winter solstice festival. And the best example of how to celebrate Christmas are probably the Romans through their festival Saturnalia. That's the god of the god Saturn, who was the god of agriculture. And so they really knew how to party, these Romans. I mean, they would take a month off, and all the businesses and schools closed, which would have been really exciting for every family, no matter where you are in the society. That would be exciting, wouldn't it? And the slaves were freed for a month, and they had role reversals, and so the slaves became the masters became the slaves, and they passed presents to one another, and they served each other. So now the masters are serving the slaves, and that was their way of saying thank you for the slaves. Because although slavery sounds like a terrible thing, and it was a lot better than death. And the choices were, when the Romans conquered your country, you either did what Rome said, or you weren't going to be around for very long. And so as horrendous as it sounds, there were some of these glorious moments around the traditional festivals. And they were very hedonistic in Rome. So they had orgies and wine and beer and food coming out of their ears, and they really knew how to celebrate Christmas. And this is what caused concern to the Christians. So this is how Christmas started to become a Christian tradition too. Because all of a sudden, Pope Julius I is looking around and saying, where is everybody? And his assistants would say, well, sorry, mate, sorry, Pope. They're offering free wine and food. And who can resist that? And, if you're lucky, you can be part of an orgy as well. we're asking people to flay themselves with a cat of nine tails. It's not much fun. Christianity is not much fun at the moment. I'm sorry, but that's the truth. So Pope Julius, obviously a smart businessman and a good marketer, he said, "Oh well, we better change our attitude. So okay, let's get some wine and let's get some food and let's see if we can get them back." And so that's how they kind of came about Christmas. And he arbitrarily chose, Pope Julius I, arbitrarily chose December the 25th. Now, obviously, December is a winter solstice, so all of these celebrations around the 21st, 22nd, where the daylight returns and the days get longer, and so everyone talks about rebirth and light, and so they did a similar sort of thing. So they had this so they created this story of the Nativity about birth and light, and he picked December the 25th as his arbitrary date for doing this. Quite where the shepherds come in, I don't know, because there was no shepherding around the winter solstice because the animals were all sacrificed. There was no refrigeration, so you had to kill the animals, and it was the first time during the year you probably had meat, fresh meat. So that's why it was such a celebration. And so Pope Julius I's version of Christmas actually caught on, and as Christianity grew, it exported to Egypt by 432 AD, exported to Egypt, and then from Egypt to Europe, particularly in England and Germany. And prior to all of this, unbeknownst to anybody who didn't travel to Scandinavia, because that was a hard place to get to in those days, the Norse, they had their own winter solstice celebration, and they called it the celebration of Yule. And what they did was they chopped down a tree and they cleaned the tree so it looked like a massive log, and then they set fire to the massive log, and it took 12 days to burn. And that's how you get the 12 days of Christmas. And also, not by chance I suspect, they also sacrificed all their animals around about that time because animals would be required feeds during the winter when there's no pasture for them to feed on, and so they couldn't in those days couldn't afford it. There was no refrigeration, so they sacrificed the animals or slaughtered the animals, and they had meat for the first time. But they also had been making beer and wine through the year, and it's a fermentation process, and the fermentation was complete round about the winter solstice. So the Norse were all a little bit like the Romans. They knew how to party, they knew how to have a good time. And so we get a lot of our traditions from the Romans and from the Norse. And most of it was copied by the Christians, of course. And Christmas kind of caught on everywhere. And it turned up in England in the 6th century, and it just got bigger and bigger, and was a true winter celebration, a true harvest celebration, if you like, a winter solstice celebration, until the world's first Grinch came along. And the world's first Grinch went by the name of Oliver Cromwell. And I think something must have happened to him when he was a child, because he was a right misery. And he thought there was too much decadence in England, and he wanted to get rid of all this decadence. And so he cancelled Christmas. He outlawed it. This made him quite unpopular. I mean, you can outlaw Christmas, but don't take our food and our wine and our beer away from us. Okay, so he did that. And it wasn't long before Charles II was reinstated, and the first thing Charles II did was, hey guys, let's have Christmas again. And so he became quite popular very quickly. So very, very smart man. And so Christmas was kind of reborn and rebirthed, but it never really took off the same way as it had been, because we're at the same time here, 1645 in England. Just before then, 1620, you've got the Pilgrims moving from, everyone says from England to America. They didn't. Of course, they had been kicked out of England by the Reformation, and they'd gone to Holland and started their own cults in Holland. Came back, got supplies in Plymouth, and then travelled and started the New Plymouth on the eastern seaboard. Well, they made Oliver Cromwell look like a party animal. They were that Puritan and that miserable and boring. And they actually outlawed Christmas in Boston. And there's a written rule. You can read copies of this now online if you like. And it says that anyone found guilty of showing a hint of festive spirit, it actually says that, a hint of festive spirit, will be fined 5 shillings, which I think must have been a huge amount of money back then in the 1600s. It must have been massive. So Christmas was outlawed, and so there was no Christmas in America until after the American Revolution, and it leaked in a little bit. But it didn't really take off there or in England again until along come 2 fantastic authors. And the author in America was Irving, and he did the book about Geoffrey Crayon, the gentleman, and it was a fictional book, and he wrote about an English mansion where he showed that the English aristocracy and the servants can live in perfect harmony, and they had all these lovely traditions, gave each other presents at Christmas and stuff like that. And it really resonated because at the time in America there were riots everywhere. There were starvation riots, bread riots, unemployment riots, and it was have and have not. And what Irving was trying to do through his writing was to try and show that those who have, to show a bit of compassion for those who have not, and that would eliminate the need for any anarchy. And it achieved it, and people resonated with it, and they started to pick the traditions that were written in that book. Around about the same time in England, we have obviously Christmas Carol by Charles Dickens, who did a very similar thing. He tried to draw attention to the plight of the workhouses, and to show the aristocracy and those who have, if you show just this little bit of compassion, you can make all the difference in the world. And those who have not won't resent you because you have, but you'll have a coming together and a peace. And that resonated, and that took off. And people started to adopt the religions that were written about, fictionalized in both of those books. And that's what our Christmas has become. All this nonsense, this glorious nonsense I love. But around about this time of year, I always come across people who claim Christmas is theirs. You know, it's our Christian tradition. It's about the birth of a character, Jesus Christ, even though there's no hint in the Bible whatsoever of the day that he was born. And you know, they refuse to believe anything else. And so I like to put this out there just to say, you know, the world is chaotic. We know that from the last couple of years. If you hadn't figured this out yet, those in authority have no idea what they're doing. They're making it up as they go along, and the world is chaos. And out of chaos comes sometimes these wonderful patterns of behaviour. And one of the best patterns of behaviour we've ever produced, I think, is a Christmas tradition. So I love it for all of that reason. I love it for the chaos, and I love it that we hold on to these traditions as if they have any kind of meaning, and they don't. It's just a great opportunity to eat more than is healthy, to drink more than we should, and to tell those that we love them. And what better opportunity do you need to have a celebration than that? So I am actually enjoying Christmas, even though this is my first Christmas on my own, and I obviously, you know, miss Lynn more than words can say. I don't have words for it, actually. But out of all pain always comes, you know, a shining light. And so I have a close group of friends who I have to say this year, they have not allowed me to isolate. In the darkest times, those dark moments that many of you going through grief will understand what I'm talking about. In those dark moments, they made sure somehow that they were magically there all the time, in a text or a phone call or in person. And they invited me to all kinds of things. I'm sure half the time they didn't want me at their family celebrations and their friend celebrations, but they invited me and made me go and stop me isolating and help me get through it. And so if any of those watch this video, I don't know whether they will or not, but if any of them do, you know, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for the compassion you've shown to me this year, the true reflection of what Christmas is all about, I think. So I will make sure this Christmas to take time to thank each one of them from the bottom of my heart. And so that's what this is about. So I hope whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I hope you take the opportunity this Christmas just to say thank you to those people you love. Not to take Christmas seriously, but to realize that it's a pattern out of chaos, and there's something beautiful about that, something to celebrate just about that. And I hope you have a really, really happy Christmas. Thank you.